Hey guys, tonight we settle into a city that doesn't know its own ending is creeping up behind it. Picture yourself under a pale wash of moonlight, the air carrying that mixture of dust, wood smoke, and river mist that every ancient city seems to exhale once the sun has gone down. The streets around you hum softly, vendors pulling shutters closed, donkeys clopping their hooves across uneven cobblestones, someone calling out a last minute sale of figs. It all feels eternal, as though tomorrow will be another mirror copy of today. You probably won't survive this one if you stay too long, but for the moment you're safe, tucked into the illusion that stability is permanent. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking deeper into the city, the buildings crowding close, leaning toward each other like conspirators in some ancient gossip. Above you, lanterns swing gently, throwing shadows that ripple like waves across stone. Somewhere a cat darts between alleyways. The kind of creature that survives anything, wars, famine, probably the end of the world itself. And yet tonight, the city feels oddly aware of its own fragility, though of course no one admits it. People chatter about crop prices, marriages, temple duties. You notice how the shopkeepers keep their scales balanced neatly, the kind of obsession that made ancient trade networks thrive. One mainstream fact to anchor you here: many cities across history did actually vanish without clear explanation, like the Maya city of Tikal, which was once a hub of power before suddenly hollowing out. Historians still argue whether drought, war, or disease did it in. This place you're strolling through has that same kind of precarious energy, a candle flame that doesn't know the wind is coming. Your sandals scuff against mosaic tiles, yes, real mosaics, chipped but still vibrant, each depicting dolphins, hunting scenes, gods tossing thunderbolts like they're playing lawn darts. Someone really wanted to impress dinner guests. A quirky tidbit for you: some ancient cities use crocodile dung as sunscreen. Imagine slathering that on while you haggle over figs. Makes you grateful for the slightly less horrifying invention of SPF 50. As you wander, you hear snippets of laughter spilling from a tavern. It smells like spiced wine and roasted lamb, scents that wrap around you like a too heavy blanket. The musicians strum something off key, but everyone's too merry to care. And yet, look closely. There's tension under the cheer, like the final party before a storm. Maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's that collective instinct humans have always had, the one that twitches in your spine when the air feels wrong. The moon climbs higher, painting rooftops silver. You catch sight of guards pacing the walls, torches flickering. Their steps are measured, but their eyes dart too quickly. Did they hear something? Did they see smoke rising where it shouldn't? Or maybe it's just boredom, centuries of guarding stone no one attacks anymore. Either way, it plants a seed of unease. Down at the riverfront, barges creak against their moorings. You smell wet rope, tar, fish scales baking in the night air. Dock workers slump against crates, muttering about schedules, taxes, how officials always take more than their share. Some things, you see, don't change across millennia. What does change is how quickly these same docks will become ghostly ropes cut loose, boats drifting, goods left to rot. For now, though, everything continues, oblivious. You sit for a moment at the edge of the square. The temple bells toll low and resonant, the sound vibrating your chest like a bass line. Children run past chasing a hoop, their laughter sharp and fleeting. The air feels alive, like the city's breathing through you. It's almost impossible to imagine that in a matter of hours or days, or maybe just one mysterious night, all of this will collapse into silence. But that's the trick of history. It lets you savor the calm even when you know the end is already written. Some scholars whisper that cities like this were cursed, divine punishment for arrogance. Others argue, with slightly less drama, that environmental collapse or trade disruptions tipped the balance. And still, historians debate whether people fled gradually, abandoning houses one by one, or whether there truly were places where everyone vanished together, leaving meals half eaten and doors wide open. No one agrees. That uncertainty is the ghost that hovers at your shoulder as you keep walking. The wind shifts, and for a moment the torches gutter. Shadows leap high across the stone walls, almost like warning signs. You pull your cloak tighter. Somewhere behind you, a dog howls, a long, mournful sound that makes you wonder if it knows something you don't. And yet the city endures, at least for tonight. You can still taste the spiced wine, still hear the laughter, still trust that tomorrow will come as it always has. But that's the cruel comfort of history's bedtime stories. You already know that tomorrow won't. The night lingers, heavy and slow, until the first streaks of dawn smear across the sky. You wake, or maybe you never really slept, on a stone bench near the market square. The city is supposed to stir now, its heartbeat quickening with traders and clatter, but something's wrong. The air feels like it's been drained of its usual morning chatter, and the silence sits so thick you could slice it with a bread knife, though good luck finding any bread right now. You stand, brush dust from your clothes, and wander down a narrow lane where yesterday's chatter of bakers and smiths should already echo. Instead, shutters hang half open as if someone pulled them and then just walked away. There's a smell of ash, but no fire. Your sandals scuff against uneven cobblestones, each step far louder than you expect in streets that should be buzzing. Mainstream history fact for you: cities like Pompeii were silenced in moments, though their cause was very clear: ash, lava, smoke. Here, though, you don't see destruction. No collapsed beams, no blood, no panicked scribbles carved into walls, just an eerie stillness, as though the city took a collective deep breath and decided not to exhale. You pass an old fountain. Its water still runs, trickling lazily into the basin. A few coins glimmer on the bottom, left mid-wish by citizens who never return to collect their dreams. One coin is bent in half, likely hammered by some lovesick teenager trying to prove devotion. You chuckle. It's comforting to know teenagers have been making questionable choices since forever. Then you notice the animals. A tethered goat still bleats softly, tugging against a post. Birds hop nervously on windowsills. A cat sits proudly on a rooftop, tail flicking, clearly in charge now. It's unsettling, humans absent, but creatures unbothered, continuing their routines as though nothing happened. And yet, even they seem quieter, eyes darting to shadows like they sense something you don't. Historians still argue whether this kind of silence meant a warning. Did the people leave deliberately, or were they snatched by some sudden force of nature? Flood, earthquake, raiders who moved so swiftly they left no scars? The debates are endless, and your walk through these hushed streets gives you no answers, only more questions. As you turn a corner, the market square opens before you. It's frozen mid-gesture. Stalls sag under the weight of figs and dates, clay jars of oil, heaps of dyed cloth. A balance scale tips sideways with no one to correct it. A basket of pomegranates splits open, juice sticky and sweet against the stones. The strangest details, small wooden markers, lie beside goods, scratched with numbers, as though transactions had started but were never finished. It feels like you've stumbled into the middle of a paused play, where all the actors vanished backstage and forgot to return. A quirky tidbit here. In some ancient markets, vendors kept talking parrots, trained to shout prices. Imagine wandering here and hearing a lonely parrot still yelling, 2 drachmas, fresh figs, to an audience of no one. Honestly, it would be equal parts hilarious and horrifying. But this market has no parrot, just that weighted silence broken only by the creak of a cartwheel swaying in the breeze. You step closer, brush your fingers over a pile of cloth, still soft and bright. The dye hasn't faded. It hasn't been long. Hours? Days? It makes you shiver how quickly a city's pulse can drop flat. In the distance, you hear what might be a door slamming. You spin, heart thudding, but see nothing. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe you keep walking, weaving between empty stalls, your footsteps echoing against stone walls. You start to imagine the last moments here: merchants haggling, mothers tugging children through the crowd, priests chanting near the temple steps. Then, all at once, the sound cut off, leaving only the static of silence. Historians can't agree whether such silence was sudden panic or careful exodus. And you, standing here, can't tell either. The absence is complete, and absence is always more unnerving than ruins. A bell swings in the breeze at the edge of the square. Its clang rings hollow, bouncing between buildings. You close your eyes, and for a moment you almost hear the city alive again. Laughter, gossip, the sharp crack of pottery breaking. You open them, and all of it is gone. Just the bell, just the silence, just you. And the unsettling truth whispers through you. Silence is louder than chaos, because silence makes you fill in the blanks yourself. You drift away from the square, the silence clinging to your ears like a damp cloth. The path ahead narrows into crooked alleys, where shadows stretch long and sharp. You find yourself drawn toward the market's inner ring, the place where business always thrived most, where gold, spices, and gossip passed hands with equal urgency. And yet now, nothing passes at all. Your sandals crunch on scattered herbs, sprigs of rosemary, fennel, crushed coriander pods ground underfoot. They shouldn't be lying here in piles. Merchants prized every grain of spice like treasure, but here they are, left mid-transaction, as though the buyer simply vanished before paying. You pause beside a wooden stall, its scale pan tilted with half a pound of saffron thread still resting inside. The sight almost makes you laugh. Half a pound of saffron could buy you a house today. And here it lies, forgotten. Don't even think about stuffing it in your bag. Time travel doesn't cover shoplifting. One mainstream historical echo. Archaeologists at Çatalhöyük in modern Turkey uncovered market-like areas that showed traces of trade but also abrupt abandonment. The mystery always nags: did people run? Did they migrate slowly? Or was something stranger at play? Historians still argue whether those deserted stalls were signs of collapse or just a community outgrowing its foundations. You keep walking and find a handful of coins scattered across the stones, not dropped in a chase, no laid out almost neatly, as though someone had been counting them, paused, and then never came back. One coin still rests inside a folded palm-sized cloth, wrapped for safe delivery. You hesitate before touching it. The metal gleams dully in the light, untouched by theft or weather. Who abandons money so carelessly, unless something more important than wealth yanked them away? The smell of dried fish lingers in the air, sharp and salty. A barrel stands half open, brine crusting its rim. Flies buzz lazily above it, undisturbed by hands that should be waving them away. The absurdity hits you. An entire city evaporated, but the flies remain on duty. If there's ever proof that nature is petty, that's it. A quirky tidbit. In some ancient markets, stall owners use clay price tags with symbols pressed into them. Imagine carrying a bag full of little clay emojis just to tell someone, 3 chickens for this jar. Somewhere in this silence, you half expect to trip over a forgotten price emoji yourself. The deeper into the bazaar you walk, the stronger the unease. It's not just emptiness, it's the wrong kind of emptiness. Not abandonment after war, not ruin after fire. The goods remain, the tools remain, even the scales and records remain. What doesn't remain are the hands that use them, and as you stand among spice jars, bolts of cloth, and amphorae of wine, you realize how bizarre it is that nothing's been looted. If invaders came, they would have ransacked it. If famine struck, survivors would have taken food. Instead, the stalls look like they're waiting for customers who simply never arrived. Historians still debate whether some vanished cities might have been deliberately hidden, covered by sand, swallowed by swamp, erased from maps by rival powers. Yet even deliberate erasure doesn't explain this half-completed business, the sense of interruption frozen in midair. You stop near a butcher's stall. Knives still rest neatly on the table, blades glinting faintly. A haunch of meat lies half-cut, darkened now but not consumed. The smell should be overwhelming by now, yet it's faint, as though time itself paused decay here. You joke to yourself that maybe someone invented the world's first walk-in freezer without realizing it. The breeze shifts, carrying faint echoes so faint you wonder if you're imagining them. Shouts, haggling, the clip of sandals, the metallic ring of coins. You spin quickly, eyes scanning the alley, but it's still empty. Only the fabric awnings flutter, sighing like voices muffled behind cloth. Your heart beats faster. You feel watched, though by what, you can't say. The goat you saw earlier? The gods of trade, furious that their market shut down early. Or maybe it's just a trick your brain plays when it tries to fill the void of sound with ghosts of what used to be. And then, tucked in the corner, you notice something different. A child's doll made of straw, its arms stretched wide, lying in the dust beside the coin scales. It doesn't belong here, not in the merchant's quarter. It's a tiny reminder that this market wasn't just commerce, it was life, family, routine, and that life ended mid scene, leaving the stage props behind. The market lies still, as if waiting for you to place the next order. But you know better, this menu doesn't come with a waiter. It comes with questions that no one has ever been able to answer. You slip out of the marketplace, the scent of abandoned spices fading, and step into the neighborhoods where people once lived. The alleys curve into clusters of homes, each doorway yawning open as though the city collectively forgot to lock up. You pause at one threshold. The door creaks slightly in the breeze, but no one stands behind it. No voice calls out. Its unsettling homes are the last place people abandon. You step inside, and the air hits you warm, heavy, still carrying the faint smell of smoke from the last cooking fire. Ash lies scattered in the hearth, embers faintly glowing like the memory of a heartbeat. On a low table rests a clay bowl with bread still half torn, as though someone took a bite, set it down, and never returned. You glance around, half expecting the family to come bustling back in, laughing at the silly traveler trespassing in their kitchen. But no one comes. One mainstream historical note: when archaeologists explored Akrotiri, the Bronze Age settlement on Santorini, they found frescoes, pottery, even food, but no bodies. The eruption had been catastrophic, yet people seemed to have vanished before it struck. Historians still argue whether the residents escaped in time or were swallowed by sea and ash with no trace. This house gives you that same riddle: the possessions remain, but the people do not. Your fingers trail across the walls. The plaster is painted with faded scenes of birds and flowers, simple decorations meant to brighten daily life. On the low shelf sit clay jars with herbs, coriander, cumin, time sealed tightly, preserved for no one. You smile, faintly. Even here, someone once obsessed over seasoning. Then you catch sight of something stranger: a chair tipped backward, lying in the middle of the floor. It looks less like it was placed, and more like it was knocked over in a hurry. Did someone run? Did they fall? Or was it just clumsy children at play? Historians still argue whether such subtle signs mark panic or coincidence, and standing here, you find yourself joining that eternal debate. A quirky tidbit: ancient households often kept pet monkeys, trained to fetch fruit or entertain guests. Imagine sitting at dinner and your monkey knocks over the wine jug, then everyone blames the poor creature for centuries after. You glance around half jokingly, wondering if some mischievous monkey was responsible for the tipped chair in this empty home. You wander further in. The bedrooms hold neatly laid mats, blankets folded, sandals lined against the wall. It's too neat, too prepared, as though the family meant to come back. A child's toy cart sits in the corner, its tiny wheels carved from wood. You bend down and touch it, feeling the dust settle on your fingers. Someone once pushed this across the floor, laughing, maybe tripping over their own excitement. That laughter lingers like a ghost in the silence. Through a narrow window, you see into the neighbor's home. Its door, too, is open wide. You step across the lane and into another kitchen, this one larger. A clay pot simmers faintly, the lid still warm when you lift it. How long does warmth last when no one is here to stir the fire? The thought prickles at your skin. Outside, the lane winds between more homes, each one echoing the same story. Doors open, meals half prepared, beds ready. You pass through a courtyard with laundry still hanging, tunics stretched across a rope, swaying lightly in the breeze. They should have been taken down days ago, yet the fabric looks fresh, as though washed just yesterday. Historians still debate whether some abandoned cities fell victim to sudden forced migrations, armies, or rulers demanding an evacuation. If that's true, you wonder how an entire community left so abruptly yet carried nothing with them. No food, no tools, no money, just themselves vanishing into the unknown. You sit on a stone bench in one of the courtyards, staring at the emptiness. The silence is heavier here than in the market because homes are supposed to hum with voices, footsteps, arguments over chores. Instead, you hear only the faint creak of a shutter and the persistent hum of insects. And then, almost absurdly, you notice a loaf of bread sitting on a windowsill, perfectly shaped, untouched. Maybe it was left to cool, maybe it's been there for hours or days. Either way, it's as though the baker intended to return within moments but never did. You laugh softly, not because it's funny, but because the alternative is admitting how much this unsettles you. A whole neighborhood left behind, doors swinging open, warmth lingering in kitchens, toys forgotten on the floor. The city isn't just empty, it's paused, caught mid breath, waiting for something that never arrives. And as you rise to leave, you glance once more into that first home, the one with embers still glowing. For a fleeting second, you imagine the family returning, brushing past you, resuming their meal as though nothing happened, but the doorway stays empty, and the silence follows you back into the street. You move on from the quiet homes, the air heavier with every step, and turn down a narrow street where laughter should spill like water. The walls lean closer here, their plaster cracked but still echoing with a memory. The sound you expect, shouts, squeals, the thud of sandals running, never comes. Instead, you find toys. The first is a wooden hoop lying on its side in the dust. A stick rests beside it, the kind children use to keep the hoop rolling. You picture small hands guiding it, giggles chasing the ring as it spun. But the giggles are gone, and the hoop lies still, as though a game was cut short mid-chase. A few steps further, a doll made of cloth sits propped against the wall. Its button eyes stare blankly, the smile stitched too wide. The absurdity strikes you. Someone must have carefully sewn this toy. Maybe a parent sitting by firelight, but the child who hugged it tight is nowhere to be found. A chill runs down your spine. Mainstream history reminder: in the ruins of Pompeii, archaeologists found casts of children curled against their mothers. In other vanished cities, like Teotihuacan, homes contained miniature figurines, proof that children played right up until silence claimed them. Historians still argue whether the games ended gradually, with families migrating away, or whether something sudden tore everyone from their play. You stoop to pick up a carved ball, its wood polished smooth from use. It rolls a few inches in your hand before you set it down. You half expect to hear a child demand it back, but the street remains mute. Only your own breath sounds, far too loud in the emptiness. A quirky tidbit: some ancient children's games involved clay dice, marked not with numbers but with tiny animals, cats, birds, snakes. Imagine your fate being decided by whether a clay duck or lizard landed face up. You grin for a moment, then glance down the alley and feel that grin fade. The dice here are scattered across a doorstep as though tossed but never picked up. Did the game end unfinished? Or did the players simply vanish, leaving the roll eternal? The silence of children's absence is sharper than the silence of empty homes or markets. Children are the heartbeat of a city, noisy, relentless, unable to stay still. To see their toys without their laughter feels wrong, like staring at a stage after the actors walked out mid-scene. You pause near a small square where chalk lines faintly mark a playing field on the stone. The lines are crude but clear, hopscotch's ancient cousin maybe, or a ball game whose rules no one remembers. You crouch and touch the marks, the chalk dust faintly clinging to your fingers. Someone drew this recently, yet no one plays it now. Historians still debate whether children's artifacts tell us more truth about collapse than adult possessions do. Adults plan, hoard, scheme. Children just play. When their play is abruptly abandoned, the story becomes sharper, more brutal. Did the families flee at night, waking children mid dream and dragging them into the dark, or did some sudden force erase them before morning came? You walk further and spot something that jolts you, the faint outline of small handprints pressed into drying plaster. They're smeared, imperfect, the way children always are when told, don't touch that. You smile despite yourself, then swallow. Those little hands reached here, and then nothing. The wind picks up, carrying with it the faint creak of a swing. You follow the sound until you reach a courtyard. There it is, a rope swing, dangling from a wooden beam, swaying back and forth. No child clings to it, yet it moves as though someone just let go. You tell yourself it's the wind, but the image of a small body flying forward into laughter that never finished is harder to shake. And you realize this is the cruelest silence yet. Not because of what's missing, but because of what remains. Toys, games, handprints, echoes of joy. The city isn't just abandoned, it's robbed of its noisiest voices, the ones that made even the darkest alleys feel alive. You step back into the lane, the swing still moving behind you, and carry those echoes with you like shadows stitched to your heels. You drift away from the toys and the echoes of children, and soon the lane opens into a wider square. Here you expect chatter neighbors calling from doorways, haggling over food, clinking of amphorae. Instead, you meet tables left mid-meal. A clay jug lies tipped on its side, the wine long since seeped away but leaving a dark stain in the dust. Beside it, a loaf of bread has hardened into stone, its scored crust frozen as if waiting for a hand to tear it. You imagine teeth sinking in, a sip of wine to follow, and yet no one took that bite. Mainstream history reminder. In Pompeii, entire bakeries were found with bread still in the ovens, carbonized but intact. Meals cut short, kitchens abandoned mid-preparation. In Çatalhöyük, one of the earliest known cities, animal bones and half-ground grains suggest people left their tables suddenly with food untouched. Historians still argue whether famine struck, invaders stormed, or disaster swept through faster than hands could gather supper. You move deeper into the square. Bowls sit arranged in a circle, as if a family had just been called to eat. The ladle rests inside the pot, poised to serve. It feels theatrical, staged, but you know it isn't. This is no museum display, it's life interrupted. A quirky tidbit. Ancient Roman chefs sometimes flavored dishes with fermented fish sauce, garum, so pungent it could be smelled streets away. Imagine that sharp tang drifting here once, mingling with roasted meat and fresh bread. You sniff the air now, out of habit, but only dust greets you. On a bench nearby, a clay cup has rolled to the ground. Its rim is chipped where it struck the stone. Did someone drop it in haste, jolted by panic? You can almost hear the ceramic shatter, followed by footsteps pounding away. The square is lined with shops, open stalls still cluttered with wares. A merchant's scales lie balanced on the counter, one pan slightly heavier, as though mid-transaction. Coins are scattered beside it, never collected. You picture the buyer and seller facing each other, hands frozen above the table, then both vanishing in the same breath. The silence thickens here. It isn't just homes or toys, it's the heartbeat of commerce, the shared ritual of eating and trading, suddenly carved out. You feel it most in the absence of smell. Cities breathe through their kitchens, stews simmering, bread baking, spices drifting through air. Here the air is sterile. You crouch beside an overturned amphora, its clay surface etched with symbols, an owner's mark, perhaps, or a tally of trade. Historians still debate whether such symbols were personal signatures or communal codes for distribution. You trace them with your finger, then pull back quickly. It feels intrusive, like opening someone's diary mid-sentence. Beyond the market, you notice scraps of cloth fluttering from a stall, dyed threads of red and blue, colors costly in the ancient world. Someone had strung them up to display, hoping to draw buyers. Now they sway in the wind, a display for no one. You pause at another table. Clay bowls stacked neatly, one cracked across the middle. The crack looks recent, but you know it isn't. Time preserved it as it was, a moment of clumsy handling or maybe a hand trembling from fear. Historians still argue whether markets tell the truest story of abandonment. Homes reflect private life, temples the sacred. But the market, that's where everyone converges, rich and poor, young and old. When it freezes, you see the city's pulse stop in unison. You take a step back and scan the square. The scattered coins, the bread petrified mid bake, the bowls arranged as if waiting for hands, the amphora overturned like a gesture of protest. All of it whispers the same thing. This city didn't fade. It halted. The wind rattles through empty stalls, nudging the scales, making the coins tremble faintly against stone. For an instant, you imagine the murmur of trade returning, the haggling voices, the laughter, the sharp clap of a merchant sealing a deal, but it's only the echo in your mind, stubborn against the silence. And so you leave the square behind, carrying the taste of a meal never finished, the weight of coins never spent, and the chill of a city whose last supper was served to no one. You step out of the hushed square and drift into another street, this one broader, paved smoother, meant for feet that never stop moving. It funnels you toward the heart of the city, the great marketplace. Even now, empty as it is, you can feel how alive it once was. The space opens before you like a stage, stalls lining the edges, the center worn flat from centuries of footsteps. You pause, letting your eyes sweep across what remains. Long tables stretch in uneven rows, some overturned, others still upright. Above them hang wooden frames where awnings once flapped, shading fruits, spices, and trinkets from the Sunday. Without the cloth, the skeletons look like bare ribs against the sky. You straighten, letting your gaze sweep across the market one last time. Bread hardened like rock, coins scattered like seeds, hooks swinging faintly, amphorae cracked open like bones. Historians still debate whether this market ended with fire, flood, or something subtler: economic collapse, disease, abandonment by choice. You can't answer. All you know is what you see: a world mid breath, exhaling, and then refusing to inhale again. And as you turn to leave, the marketplace seems to watch you, every stall, every object holding its story out to you, begging not to be forgotten. You carry them with you, even as you step beyond the square. The silence doesn't release you, it only tightens, following like a shadow, stitched to your heels. You leave the hushed marketplace behind, the empty stalls fading into silence, and your steps draw you toward a part of the city that feels heavier. The roads here grow narrower again, but not with homes or shops. These paths are lined with stone walls cut more carefully, stacked more deliberately, guiding you into a district meant not for trade, not for laughter, not for children's games, but for reverence. The shrines rise out of the dust like stiff-backed sentinels, their doors gape open as if still expecting worshippers to step through, kneel, and whisper prayers into the air. But no smoke curls from altars, no sandals scuff the stone floors, no voices chant in rhythm. It feels like walking backstage after a grand play. The props are all here, but the actors have vanished. You push gently on a half-hinged wooden door. It swings wide with a groan. Inside, the shrine is dim, the walls painted with faded figures. You trace them with your eyes. Tall beings with halos, animals carved into patterns, symbols looping like vines. The paint clings stubbornly, though the years have scraped at it. Mainstream history reminder. In Pompeii, archaeologists discovered household shrines called lararia, decorated with painted serpents, protective spirits, and offerings of fruit and wine. In Angkor, temples once echoed with bells, incense, and prayers, their basins still stained with ashes. Historians still argue whether shrines like these were purely religious or whether they doubled as civic memory vaults, places where festivals and traditions were rehearsed to glue the community together. You step deeper inside. The altar stands waiting, flat and cracked, its surface bearing faint circles of soot. Candles once burned here, maybe oil lamps too, their light flickering across the stone. You lean close and smell nothing but dust. But your imagination fills the gap. Warm wax melting, oil crackling, smoke lifting like a veil toward the ceiling. A clay bowl sits on the altar, half filled with something hardened. Grain offerings, ashes, or just dirt collected over centuries. You picture a woman pouring grain into it, whispering a prayer for her child's health, or a soldier setting down a coin before marching away. But the bowl remains untouched, the offering never cleared, the prayer never answered. A quirky tidbit. Some ancient people believed certain gods were easily distracted. To make sure prayers stuck, worshippers tied little bells to their offerings so the tinkling sound would remind the divine not to forget them. Imagine standing here centuries ago, shaking a bowl of grain just to keep your God awake. You glance around this silent room and think, maybe even gods grew tired of listening. Outside the shrine, the street winds into a larger courtyard. Here, the space opens, wide columns circle it, their tops broken but still noble. In the middle, a plinth rises, empty now, but it once held a statue. You can almost see it, a towering figure of stone or bronze, draped in robes, eyes cast down at the crowd that once filled this courtyard. But there's no crowd. The plinth is bare. The statue either toppled or was carried away. The emptiness makes the absence sharper, like an empty throne in a deserted hall. You notice small niches carved into the columns, shallow hollows, where candles or offerings once Saturday. One niche still holds a tiny clay figurine no bigger than your thumb. Its face is rough, its arms stubby, but it radiates care. Someone shaped it lovingly, placed it carefully. Did they believe the little figure would carry their hopes upward? Or was it just habit, the way you toss a coin in a fountain today, not sure if you believe but unable to resist? Historians still argue whether ritual was born of deep faith or social duty. Did people truly believe gods watched, waiting for offerings? Or did they perform out of fear of neighbors' judgment, afraid to be the one household without a shrine? Even now, standing in this empty courtyard, you feel that tension, faith or performance, belief or insurance policy. You walk along the edge of the courtyard, past the row of broken benches. The stone seats are smoothed by countless bodies once pressing down, waiting for ceremonies. The silence clings to them, but you can almost hear the echoes, murmured prayers, rustle of robes, coughs suppressed while priests spoke. Now only the wind answers, and there at the far end you see a basin, carved from a single block of stone, wide and shallow. It once held water. The bottom still bears faint stains, rings of mineral deposits where liquid sat too long. You crouch, run your fingers along the rim, cool and gritty. This was cleansing water. People dipped their hands before entering, purifying themselves. You imagine the line of bodies, each person pausing, touching the water, flicking droplets onto their faces. Now, the basin is dry. The idea of cleansing feels unnecessary in a place where no one remains to be clean. You rise and move on. Deeper into the ritual quarter, the shrines grow grander. One stands taller than the rest, its roof still clinging to life, its doorway framed by carved beasts, lions, their jaws wide, their teeth dulled by time. You walk between them and feel a pang of uneasy guardians left guarding nothing. Inside, the walls are brighter. Red pigment lingers, the paint more vivid, protected by shadow. Patterns twist across the stone, vines, stars, animals leaping in frozen arcs. You tilt your head, trying to follow the story. Was this creation myth, harvest ritual, or just decoration meant to impress visitors? A small staircase rises in the back. You climb it slowly, each step creaking under your weight. At the top, a narrow balcony overlooks the chamber. Priests once stood here, high above the worshippers, chanting down like voices from heaven. You lean on the stone railing and imagine the view crowds kneeling, lamps glowing, prayers rising. Now, only dust stirs at your feet. Historians still argue whether priesthoods wielded real power or only ceremonial. Were they the city's leaders, directing politics under the mask of ritual, or were they just servants of tradition, reciting words no one truly believed? In ruins like these, the answer slips through your fingers. The shrines stand, but the meaning has already vanished. You descend, careful on the worn steps, and step back into the street. It feels quieter here, if that's possible. The kind of quiet that presses into your ears until you hear your own heartbeat too loudly. Ahead, another shrine draws you, smaller, tucked between houses, almost hidden. Its doorway is narrow, its altar modest. But inside you find something startling: footprints, small depressions in the dust where feet once stood. The prints overlap, layer upon layer, as if generations stepped in the same spots. You crouch and place your hand against one. The shape is still clear: heel, arch, toes. Someone stood here, waiting, praying. The print outlasted the prayer. A quirky tidbit: in some parts of the ancient Mediterranean, worshippers pressed coins into temple walls, leaving them stuck in cracks like shiny graffiti. In time, the coins fused into the stone itself, creating glittering walls of devotion. You check the cracks here, half hoping to find the coin, but see only shadow. Maybe this city had different traditions, or maybe the coins were taken long ago, carried away by hands that no longer believed in their power. The thought makes you smile wryly. Humans never change. Even in sacred spaces, someone is always pocketing the shiny bits. You step outside again. The ritual district stretches on, shrine after shrine, empty but insistent. They demand recognition, even now. And you realize something: the shrines may be silent, but they aren't gone. Their stones outlive the worshippers, their patterns outlive the myths. Even if no one remembers the names of the gods, the architecture still whispers, "Once we believed. Once we prayed. Once we feared." Historians still debate whether ruins preserve belief or erase it. Do these empty shrines keep the gods alive in memory, or do they prove that faith is mortal, crumbling with its people? Walking among them, you feel the tension pulled both ways. The sun dips lower as you pass the final shrine, its door locked tight, the wood swollen with age. You rest your hand on it, then let go. Whatever was worshipped here, it's long gone. But the silence holds the shape of devotion, even without the voices to fill it. And as you step back into the empty street, you carry a realization heavier than before. Cities vanish, people vanish, but rituals leave shadows deeper than stone. You leave behind the homes, the toys, the markets, and the temples, your steps carrying you toward the heart of what once was the city's joy. For if every vanished city has a pulse, then here is where it beat the loudest. In its theaters, its baths, its gathering halls, the places where voices once swelled together in laughter, in music, in chosip, in ritual cleansing. Now those voices have thinned into a hollow echo, lingering but never returning. The street widens as you walk, opening into what must have been a plaza. The stones beneath your feet are worn smooth, polished not by water but by countless sandals striking them in rhythm. You pause, tracing your gaze over the semicircle ahead. There it rises, tier after tier of stone seats, curving like a frozen wave. The amphitheater. Once it must have thrummed with the sound of thousands, their cheers rattling the sky. Now it stares down at you, an empty shell. You climb the steps slowly, your hand brushing over cool stone. Here a groove carved deeper than the rest, where a spectator always tapped his foot, perhaps, or where a child dragged a stick across the edge while waiting for the show to begin. You sit halfway up, the city spread before you. Imagine the stage below, alive with dancers, orators, or gladiators, drums pounding, flutes piercing the air, the murmur of a crowd rising and falling like the tide. Now all you hear is the wind sighing through broken arches. A strange detail. Archaeologists studying amphitheaters across vanished cities found graffiti scratched into the walls, names, crude drawings, little hearts marking lovers who once sat shoulder to shoulder. I was here, they seem to whisper across centuries. You look now and wonder if the faint scratches on these stones, nearly erased by time, hold the same stubborn memory. Lovers declaring themselves eternal in a place that did not last. You stand and walk down toward the stage. The acoustics are eerie. Even the crunch of your sandal against gravel bounces back tenfold, as though the theater itself is mocking you, filling the silence with a counterfeit audience. You speak a word, just one, and it comes back to you, warped, hollow. You stop abruptly because the echo feels too alive, too eager. From here, a corridor leads away, low roofed, the kind performers once used to enter unseen. You follow it into shadow. The air is cooler, damp, smelling faintly of stone and something older. Your fingers brush the walls, tracing niches where torches once burned. You can almost see them, the actors painting their faces, the gladiators pacing, a nervous singer clutching her lyre. Did they ever get to perform their last song? Or did the world go silent before they reached the stage? You emerge not into light, but into another kind of gathering space, the baths. The doorway yawns wide and ornate, its lintel carved with waves and dolphins. Inside, the grand chamber stretches out, its floor a mosaic of blue and white tiles. But the water is gone, drained centuries ago, leaving only a cracked basin. You walk across it, your footsteps sharp, as though disturbing a pool that should ripple but does not. In your mind, you see it as it was, steam curling upward, the splash of limbs, the murmur of conversations weaving together into a soft roar. Here, men discussed politics, sealing alliances between soap and laughter. Here, women whispered gossip, their voices mingling with the splash of water. Children shrieked, diving from ledges, their joy echoing against vaulted ceilings. The baths were not merely for washing, they were for weaving the threads of a city into one fabric. Now silence has unraveled it. You bend and touch the cracked mosaic. A fish swims there, frozen in tile, its eyes staring eternally upward. You run your palm across it and wonder how many bare feet touch this same fish, pausing to admire, to laugh, to call it good luck. A peculiar historical note drifts into your mind. In some abandoned Roman baths, archaeologists found coins at the bottom of the pools, offerings tossed like prayers into the water. Wishes, hopes, perhaps even bribes to the gods. Here, too, in the crack of the basin, you see a glint, a tiny disk of bronze, dulled with age. Someone's wish, never retrieved. Did they hope for wealth, for love, for health? Did they drown with that hope unfulfilled when silence swallowed their city? You walk deeper into a smaller chamber. This would have been the caldarium, the hot bath. Its walls are lined with clay pipes, still faintly visible, once carrying steam. The benches curve around the room, meant for bodies slick with sweat, leaning close to trade secrets. You imagine the heat pressing in, voices lowered not only for secrecy but because steam stole breath. Now the air's dry, almost brittle. The benches are cold, their stone unyielding. You sit and for a moment you close your eyes. The ghosts of conversation brush your ears, half-heard debates, laughter spilling, a song hummed beneath breath. When you open your eyes, you are alone. The benches stare blankly back. Outside, the path continues toward another building, grand and columned. You know even before you step inside what it must be, the theater, not for blood sport, but for drama, for comedy, for tragedy. The floorboards are gone, rotted or looted long ago, but the skeleton of the building remains. Masks once adorned these walls, smiling, weeping, shouting. Now only faint outlines remain where paint once clung. You stoop and pick up a shard of pottery. Painted across it is half a face, an exaggerated eye rimmed with black, a theater mask fragment. You hold it to the light, trying to imagine the rest. Was it meant for comedy, its grin too wide, or tragedy, its mouth forever frozen in despair? Either way, it reminds you of the cloth doll you saw earlier in the children's quarter, the same emptiness, the same absurdity of a face without a body, a performance without an audience. The thought unsettles you, and you let the shard fall. It clinks against the stone and lies still, like a line of dialogue cut short. Quirky tidbit: historians discovered that in some Greek and Roman theaters, actors used hollow bronze masks to amplify their voices, projecting them to the farthest row. Imagine shouting your truth into a hollow face, letting metal carry your words to strangers. You glance around this silent theater and wonder, what was the last line spoken here? Was it a joke, leaving the audience mid-laughter forever, or a cry of grief, echoing into a silence that has never ended? You leave, stepping back into the plaza. Behind you, the amphitheater, the baths, the theater, they loom like skulls of giants, their purpose gone, their bones intact. Entertainment, pleasure, community, all left waiting mid-breath for people who never returned. The city feels heavier now. The silence of homes was intimate, the silence of markets unsettling, the silence of temples reverent. But here, the silence is unbearable because it is staged silence designed to be filled. The stones were built to hold voices, laughter, arguments, splashing water. Without those, the structures ache. As you walk away, the wind rises, rushing across the plaza like a sudden applause. For a moment, you swear it carries the cadence of laughter, the roll of drums, the splash of water. But it dies as quickly as it comes, leaving you with only the memory of what should be. And you realize this: the cruelest silence is not in the private places, but in the public ones. For when the crowd disappears, the world itself feels emptier. A vanished city is not only a place without people, it is a place without witnesses, without an audience to remind us that we are alive. You pause at the edge of the square, glancing back one last time. The seats rise in shadow, the stage lies bare, the pool is dry. You imagine them suddenly alive again, thousands of figures filling the space, shouting, laughing, splashing, clapping. You almost hit it. You almost say it. But then the wind shifts, the vision scatters, and you are left alone, your footsteps echoing like the last performance no one stayed to applaud. You slip through another narrow lane, the shadows lengthening as the air grows stiller, and soon you step into a large hall. At first, you think it must be a meeting chamber, but then you notice the tables long slabs of stone or wood, arranged in rows. Cups, bowls, and platters still sit on them, as if the banquet ended only moments ago. Yet the benches are empty. Your eyes travel to a platter where roasted meat once rested. Only a dark, hardened stain remains. Beside it, a cluster of grapes has withered into nothing but brittle husks. A clay jug leans on its side, a faint ring marking where its contents once pooled. It's the same story everywhere: feast prepared, feast abandoned. Mainstream history reminder: in Pompeii, archaeologists uncovered houses where food still sat on tables, interrupted by catastrophe. In the ancient palace at Knossos, great halls were built for communal feasts, their plastered walls bearing traces of soot from torches. Historians still argue whether such banquets were purely ritual or partly political, where meals doubled as negotiations and alliances. You step closer to one of the benches and rest your hand on the smooth surface. You picture a row of diners here, laughing, arguing, reaching for bread, spilling wine when the joke landed too hard. You can almost hear the cheer, but the air is too heavy. The silence swallows it whole. A quirky tidbit: Roman banquets sometimes featured mystery courses, live birds hidden inside pies, or desserts shaped like roasted boar but made of honeyed dough. Imagine the delight, the squeals, the awkward applause when the pastry cracked open and doves fluttered out. Here, though, the only flutter is a moth that drifts lazily from a corner, disturbed by your steps. The walls of the hall are painted, faint pigments surviving the years. Reds, blues, ochres, the backdrop of revelry. You trace a faded figure, a man reclining on a couch, cup in hand, eyes half closed in intoxication. It feels ironic now, almost cruel. The painted feast still goes on while the real diners vanished. You move to another table where the layout is still precise. Cups placed evenly, a knife resting across a board, a scattering of lentils hard as stone. The knife's handle is worn, carved with spirals that catch the light. You imagine the cook who owned it, proud of his craft, unaware his last meal would never be served. Historians still debate whether ancient feasts were inclusive or exclusive. Did whole communities eat together, or were these halls reserved for the elite? If the poor never sat here, their silence was already normal. But the rich, too, are missing now, their wine cups drained only by time. You notice something strange at the edge of the hall, a chair tipped backward, its legs frozen mid-fall, as though the person who sat there leapt up in haste. Coins are scattered near it, a purse spilled wide. Did someone stand too suddenly, startled by a sound, and rush away? You crouch and touch one coin, the metal cold, the engraving worn but still visible, a ruler's profile, his eyes forever watching. The ceiling arches overhead, beams darkened with age. From them hang hooks where lamps once burned oil, casting golden light over feast and laughter. You close your eyes and imagine it, the glow of flame, the scent of roasted meat, the buzz of conversation layered with music. Then you open them again, and the lamps are dark, the hooks empty, the music erased. A draught slinks through the hall, stirring a napkin left folded on a bench. You hesitate, then pick it up. The fabric is rough, coarse, stained with wine. You fold it carefully and set it back down, as though the absent diner might return any moment to reclaim it. The cruelest part is how recent it feels, not like ruins, but like a dinner you arrived late to after everyone had already gone. It makes you uneasy, as though you're intruding on something private. Historians still argue whether final meals tell us anything meaningful. Were they ordinary suppers or last celebrations before disaster? Some think people sensed danger and gathered together one last time, eating not for hunger but for solidarity. Others believe the abandonment was too sudden for such ceremony. The truth hides somewhere in the crumbs. You drift toward the far end of the hall, where a dais rises slightly. Here, perhaps, the most honored Saturday, a goblet still stands upright on the platform, unspilled, untouched. You lean closer. The rim glitters faintly, not gold, but bronze, polished smooth. It almost dares you to take a sip. You don't. A quirky fringe detail. In some cultures, banquets were staged not just for the living, but for the dead. Offerings were left on tables, meant for ancestors. Imagine if this hall wasn't abandoned mid-meal, but rather left intentionally, food set aside for spirits who never ate it. You shiver at the thought. The echo of your footsteps fills the chamber as you walk back toward the doors. Every cup and platter seems to watch you, every bench waiting for its diners to return. And yet you know they won't. The feast is over, but the table is still set. The silence tastes thicker than wine, sharper than bread, heavier than any banquet could ever feel. You step into the street again, leaving the hall behind, its feast unfinished, its laughter swallowed whole. You walk away from the abandoned banquet hall, the echo of empty cups and toppled chairs still clinging to your ears. The street outside feels narrower now, pressed close by walls that seem to breathe in and out with your every step. And that's when you notice the scratches, not accidental scrapes or cracks from time, but deliberate marks. The walls are talking. At first, you think it's just decoration, but then you lean closer. Carved into the plaster are words, names, half phrases, symbols. Some are neat, letters carefully etched. Others are frantic, as though scratched in haste, the strokes deep and uneven. You reach out and trace a groove with your finger, feeling the sharpness of a tool pressed too hard. Mainstream history reminder, in Pompeii, graffiti was everywhere. People scribbled love notes, insults, political slogans, even jokes about bad wine and worse landlords. Archaeologists have cataloged thousands of these casual messages. They tell us more about daily life than any marble statue ever could. Historians still argue whether such wall scrolls are the truest history, because they're not written by kings or priests, but by the butcher, the sailor, the child with a stolen bit of charcoal. You step closer to a wall, smeared with fading pigment. Someone painted a mural here, dancers holding hands in a ring, musicians raising flutes. Their outlines are faint, but the joy still hums through the lines. You grin despite yourself. Then, just above them, another message is scrawled. Gone before dawn. The words are jagged, uneven, as if carved with a shaking hand. You shiver. A quirky tidbit. In some Roman bathhouses, graffiti boasted of romantic conquests, with one especially bold bather bragging, Secundus has had many women here. Imagine etching your love life into stone. Confident strangers would read it centuries later. Here, though, the walls are quieter. No boasts, just names, dates, warnings. One simply reads, Remember me. The deeper you go, the more voices you find. A child's sketch of a horse, clumsy legs too long, a spiral drawn over and over, as though someone passed the time waiting. A carved fish, the symbol early Christians used to recognize each other in secret. Were they hiding here or just marking territory? Historians still argue whether such symbols were personal prayers or communal codes. You stop at one corner where the plaster is cracked, revealing a darker layer beneath. In it, scratched faintly, is the outline of a hand, not painted, etched, a full palm and 5 fingers, pressed hard into drying plaster long ago. You press your own hand against it and feel the eerie alignment. Someone stood here once, left their mark, then disappeared. The walls don't just speak, they listen. Every laugh, every argument, every whispered secret once bounced off these stones, and maybe some echo remains. You pause, close your eyes, and swear you hear faint voices, snatches of talk, a giggle, the hiss of someone saying, hurry. But when you open your eyes, only the scratches greet you. You turn into another alley and see a wall that's been half covered by ivy. You push the leaves aside and uncover more words. A list of items, almost like a shopping reminder. Bread, oil, salt. The list ends abruptly, midword. Did the writer never return to finish? A quirky fringe detail. In medieval ruins, some walls carry curses etched against neighbors, like, may your bread turn to ashes. Graffiti wasn't just jokes, it was weapons, incantations, desperate pleas. You wonder what curses these vanished people might have flung and whether they stuck. Further along, the walls grow stranger. One has dozens of small marks clustered together, tallies perhaps, or days counted. You trace them, 1, 2, 3, 30, and then they stop. Historians still argue whether tally marks like these recorded debts, rations, or simply days waiting for something that never came. You stumble into a wider plaza where an arch towers overhead. The stones are engraved with official inscriptions, laws, decrees, proclamations in crisp lettering. The city wanted its authority chiseled forever. But just beneath the grand words, in small, messy script, someone carved, liars. The contrast makes you laugh, then wince. Even thousands of years ago, people rolled their eyes at politicians. The wind shifts, whistling along the walls, and for a moment it feels like the voices return, chants rising, arguments echoing. But it's only the air, threading through gaps where stones have fallen. You pause before one last mural. It shows a procession, figures carrying offerings, a priest lifting his hand, but the paint fades midway, leaving half the figure's ghostly outlines. You tilt your head. Did the artist never finish? Or was the wall abandoned, brush dropped, city collapsing before the color dried? Historians still argue whether unfinished art signals disaster or simply an artist's laziness. But standing here, in silence, it feels like a frozen breath. The painter lifted his brush once and never again. You lean back, taking in the walls around you. They are the city's diary, its margins full of notes, doodles, confessions, and now you're the only one reading them. Every scratched line feels like a whisper left behind, hoping anyone would come and listen. You step away, leaving the voices to murmur in their plaster graves. The city falls silent again, but the words cling to you, etched deeper than stone. You step beyond the walls that spoke in scratches and faded murals, and the streets begin to stretch longer, emptier, leading toward the city gates. You notice how quiet the road has become, almost intentionally so, as though the city is holding its breath. The cobblestones are uneven, some missing entirely, and moss creeps between them, softening your steps. Here's the road that once carried travelers, traders, and caravans. Now it leads only to emptiness. Mainstream history reminder. Many ancient cities relied on main thoroughfares for trade and communication. In Pompeii, the Cardo Maximus was lined with shops, bakeries, and fountains, bustling with daily life. Historians still argue whether the abandonment of these roads was gradual, due to economic decline, or sudden, caused by catastrophe. Ahead, you see the arch of the city gate, still standing proud despite the years. The massive doors are missing, their hinges rusted away, leaving only empty sockets in the stone. You imagine wagons rolling through here, merchants calling out prices, the scrape of wheels against stone. Now, nothing moves. Only the wind threads through the arch, carrying a hollow whistle, a quirky tidbit. In some cities, travelers left marks on gates to signify arrival or to commemorate their journey. Sometimes a coin or a carved symbol, sometimes a simple scratch. You look around and notice faint symbols etched into the gate's stone, maybe initials, maybe prayers. Whoever left them never saw the next sunrise. You wander further along the road, imagining the bustle of people, children weaving between legs, beggars calling for alms, guards shouting warnings. The road feels almost sacred now, in its emptiness, a memory of footsteps that no longer come. And yet, every time you lift a foot, the echo feels exaggerated, as if the stones are trying to remind you of the multitudes that once passed over them. To your left, a half-collapsed wall reveals remnants of carts' wheels splintered, shafts broken. Once, they would have carried grain, pottery, cloth, maybe even precious metals. Now the debris sits frozen mid-use, the skeletons of trade abandoned mid-journey. You crouch and run your fingers along a wheel spoke, cold and brittle. Imagine the last person who pushed it, unaware that this would be their final trip. Historians still debate whether trade routes determined the survival of cities. Some argue that when merchants fled, the city's lifeblood drained away. Others believe natural disasters or invaders caused the sudden exodus, making trade decline a consequence, not a cause. Here, in the silence of a broken cart, both theories feel plausible. You glance up and see the horizon beginning to shift, light fading as evening settles. Shadows stretch along the gate, long and dark, blending with the stones. You walk toward the exit, half expecting someone to step through the arch behind you, but no one comes. A fringe detail. In medieval towns, travelers sometimes left offerings at gates to protect against bandits or to bless their journey. Coins, small charms, scratches in the wood. You kneel briefly, noticing a tiny stone tucked against the wall, a single pebble that someone must have left as a token. It feels like a handshake across centuries, a silent companion for a journey never completed. The road ahead narrows into a dirt path, flanked by crumbling walls and overgrown hedges. The signs of life fade. No carts, no chatter, no footprints except your own. Even the birds seem hesitant, circling above before diving off to safer places. The city's exodus is total. You are the intruder, walking the path they all abandoned. As you continue, you notice more of the city's forgotten features: empty wells, the faint imprint of fences, the broken stone posts that once marked property boundaries. Each is a breadcrumb in a trail that leads away from life. You touch a post, and for a moment, imagine the last hand that gripped it, steady, nervous, hurried, unaware of the finality. Historians still argue whether the signs of flight, abandoned belongings, half-packed carts represent panic, preparation, or both. Here, they blend indistinguishably. You can almost hear hurried voices, wheels clattering, children crying, then nothing. The path widens again, leading to another gate, smaller, perhaps for foot traffic or servants. The stones here are polished smooth by years of travel, now cracked and mottled with moss. You step through, imagining someone slipping out under cover of darkness, glancing back once at the empty city before vanishing. The ghost of that glance lingers heavy in the air. You pause halfway between gates, looking back over the city behind you. The rooftops, the squares, the walls all remain intact, as if frozen in time. You wonder what would have happened if you'd arrived earlier. Would you have seen crowds? Heard laughter? Or would the city still have been empty but unaware that it should have been full? A quirky thought flits through your mind. Some travelers who passed through abandoned towns reported feeling watched, even when alone. They called it the eyes of the vanished, a lingering presence in spaces where life had abruptly ended. You shiver, feeling it now. Maybe it's just your imagination, or maybe it's something else, waiting silently along the empty road. As twilight settles fully, the city fades behind you, yet its imprint feels heavier. Every step forward is a negotiation with absence. The roads are empty, yes, but each stone, each crack, each relic left behind insists that something once lived here and that it can never be erased. The dirt path narrows further, twisting between low walls that once held gardens and courtyards. You pause at a shattered threshold, noticing faint impressions in the earth, footprints pressed into the soft soil, long ago, frozen in time. They're human, small and large, overlapping and tangled. Someone ran here, someone lingered, someone stopped forever. You kneel to examine them, brushing away the layer of dust and debris. The detail is haunting, the curve of a heel, the splay of toes, even the slight drag of a boot's sole. You imagine a child fleeing, clutching a parent's hand, dragging feet in fear or excitement. You imagine a merchant, a servant, a soldier, all trying to get somewhere they never reached. Mainstream history reminder. In places like Pompeii, the footprints preserved in ash provide invaluable insights into the last movements of people before disaster struck. Historians still argue whether footprints alone can tell the story of flight or panic, or if they merely record a quiet, everyday moment frozen in time. Here, though, the story feels louder than any scholarly debate. A peculiar detail catches your eye: the imprint of a ring on the soil, left by someone kneeling or falling. The circle is almost perfect, a small piece of jewelry marking a sudden pause in motion. You trace it with your finger, wondering about its owner, what they loved, what they feared, what they lost. You move onward, noticing more imprints, a bench tipped to one side, the faded outline of a fallen basket, the ghost of a wagon wheel pressed into mud long since hardened. Every object, every mark, seems to whisper a story mid-gesture, as though life had been snatched away in the middle of motion. A quirky fringe detail. In some archaeological sites, scientists have discovered handprints of people pressed against walls, as if clinging for balance or signaling for help. Some are adult, some child-sized, some strangely elongated. You spot one pressed into crumbling plaster at the side of the path, your fingers lining up almost perfectly with the hollow indentation. The past touches you. The path opens into a larger square, and your eyes are drawn to a shadowed corner where the outline of bodies is frozen in plaster or stone. They're curled, huddled, sometimes lying flat. You recognize the gesture of sleep, of fear, of surprise. You take a careful step closer, but keep your voice low. It feels wrong to disturb the silent testimony of those who vanished. Historians still debate whether these impressions are accidental or intentional memorials, whether they represent sudden disaster or a slow exodus. But standing here, the academic argument dissolves into an immediate human feeling. Absence is weighty, pressing, impossible to ignore. A few meters away, a small courtyard shows signs of a final struggle or perhaps just the chaos of everyday life abandoned. A chair tipped, a jug broken, seeds scattered across the ground. You imagine someone kneeling here, picking up a handful of lentils, then realizing the world had gone silent, leaving them alone mid-task. The surreal absurdity of a life paused in motion makes your stomach twist. You notice the shadows lengthening, stretching across footprints and impressions. The sun dips low, casting an amber light that seems too gentle for the weight of the scene. The stones absorb it, glowing faintly, almost as if they remember the warmth of human touch. A quirky tidbit drifts through your mind. In some abandoned towns, pets were found frozen mid-movement, collars or bowls untouched. The humans disappeared, but animals sometimes lingered, confused, waiting. You pause, scanning the square. A small bird flutters past, landing on a stone ledge. Its presence is brief but vivid, a reminder that not all life fled entirely. You rise and continue along the perimeter, noting the intricacy of the paths, the careful layout of buildings, the alignment of walls and gates. It's as if the city was designed to guide its inhabitants, to funnel them through life. Now, it guides only ghosts. Finally, you reach a vantage point, a small hill overlooking the expanse you've just crossed. From here, the city stretches endlessly, a labyrinth of streets, plazas, and empty courtyards. Each imprint, each shadow, each frozen gesture is visible, and the enormity of absence presses down. You realize that the city's story is written not in the monuments or the empty stages, but in the smallest details. A handprint, a footprint, a shard of pottery, a toppled chair. Historians still argue whether studying these microtraces can truly reveal the soul of a vanished city. You think it does? Every mark left behind is a pulse, a heartbeat that insists. We were here, we lived, and for a fleeting moment, the world belonged to us. The wind picks up, rustling dry leaves and scattering dust over the imprints. The sun dips lower, casting long final shadows. You know it's time to leave this square, to continue your descent through the remnants of a city that never fully slept, never fully awoke, but left enough traces to haunt those who follow. You descend from the vantage point, stepping back onto the winding streets now tinged with twilight. The city feels heavier here, as if the absence of its people has left a tangible weight pressing on the stones. Weeds push through cracks in the cobblestones, their stubborn green a stark contrast to the gray decay of the walls. Roots snake over doorways, climbing facades, as though nature itself is reclaiming what was lost. Mainstream history reminder. Abandoned cities throughout history from Pompeii to Pripyat are often overtaken by flora within decades. Vines break through stone, moss carpet steps, and trees sprout in courtyards. Historians still argue whether natural reclamation obscures history or preserves it by holding it in a slow, silent embrace. You notice a small fountain in the center of a square, its stone cracked, its basin dry. A trickle of water once danced over its edge, perhaps accompanied by the laughter of children or the gossip of merchants. Now it's a stage for leaves, a landing pad for birds, and a silent witness to everything lost. You run your hand over its worn surface, the grooves smoothed by decades of absence, imagining countless palms had touched it before you. A quirky tidbit. Some medieval fountains were said to whisper secrets when the wind hit just right, or so the locals claimed. You lean close, half expecting to hear voices of the vanished echoing across centuries. Instead, the only sound is your own breath, mingling with the soft hiss of wind through weeds. You continue along the street, noticing how the city seems to fold in on itself. Alleyways are choked with rubble, doorways sag under years of neglect. Windows stare down at you like hollow eyes, some covered in ivy, others open to the sky. Birds roost in what once were bedrooms, their calls filling spaces once dominated by human chatter. Historians still debate whether abandoned cities are eerie due to their silence or their intimacy. A city overtaken by nature allows glimpses into personal lives, clotheslines, crumbling staircases, remnants of meals, but also demands you confront emptiness. Here you feel both. A small garden emerges between two houses, overgrown but recognizable. Broken tools lie scattered, a rusted hoe next to a tipped watering can. The earth is cracked but fertile, weeds pushing toward the fading sunlight. You imagine someone tending this garden, imagining life continuing amidst turmoil, only to vanish before the next planting. A quirky fringe detail. In abandoned ruins, seeds sometimes germinate from centuries old soil, sprouting plants no one tended. You glance at the tiny sprout, marveling that life persists in defiance of absence. It's a small rebellion, a wink from nature, and you can't help but smile. You wander further, observing walls crumbling under the pressure of roots. Bricks jut out at odd angles, arches lean, and cracks widen. The decay feels deliberate, patient, almost sentient. Stones once carefully laid now shift and tumble, erasing paths you might have taken, rewriting the city in slow motion. Historians still argue whether decay teaches us more than preservation. Some say ruins allow imagination to fill gaps, while others claim reconstruction is necessary to understand history. Walking here, with roots and stones, reshaping the city, it feels like a collaboration across time. Humans build, vanish, and nature completes the story. You step onto a balcony, crumbling but intact, and look down at the streets below. Weeds climb walls, vines wrap railings, birds nest in window frames. The city is quiet, yet it breathes. It reminds you that absence is not annihilation, that even in the hollow spaces, time, wind, and life persist. You realize the weight of silence is not just emptiness, it's a tapestry of what once was and what persists. Nature's quiet reclamation softens the edges of loss, folding memories into leaves and roots, letting the city continue in a new, quieter form. You tread softly now, feeling the city settle around you like a living thing. The streets have narrowed further, alleys twisting in on themselves, doorways sagging, windows staring blankly. There's no panic here, no urgent flight, no frantic calls, only the echo of memory pressed into every stone, every splinter of wood. It's as if the city has exhaled and folded itself into stillness, inviting you to trace the outline of what once was. Mainstream history reminder: cities abandoned through sudden disaster or gradual decline leave traces not just in structures, but in textures, the wear of door handles, the polish of steps, the traces of feet in dust. Historians still argue whether these traces reveal the rhythms of daily life or the patterns of catastrophe. Here, you sense both at once. You pause at a small plaza, once likely bustling with street performers, merchants, and children playing. The cobblestones are uneven, littered with leaves, and half covered by creeping ivy. You notice a faint chalk line, perhaps a game drawn long ago, still clinging stubbornly to the stone. It's a remnant of someone's hope, a fleeting attempt to mark joy before the quiet arrived. A quirky tidbit: in some abandoned towns, old games survive centuries. Chalk outlines or hopscotch patterns hardened by time, telling stories of fleeting childhoods long vanished. You crouch to trace the shapes, imagining little feet skipping, laughing, defying the inexorable pull of absence. Further along, the walls bear the faint traces of murals and inscriptions. Faces peer out from cracked plaster, some serene, others anxious. Names etched in hurried hands whisper faintly through the years. One small message reads, "Wait for me." The words are poignant, unpolished, a fragment of human longing frozen in stone. Historians still debate whether such markings were personal pleas or messages intended for an entire community. You move on, stepping lightly over uneven stones and fallen beams. The air carries the soft murmur of wind threading through cracks, a lullaby for the city itself. Shadows stretch long across courtyards, deepening the sense of stillness. The city's essence is in these silent spaces, in the gaps between absence and memory, where time seems both suspended and relentless. A fringe detail. Occasionally, archaeologists uncover traces of pets or animals in abandoned spaces, collars, bones, nests, reminders that life persisted in microcosms, even as human presence vanished. A lone bird flits across your path, perching on a windowsill as if inspecting the intruder. Its bright eyes remind you that life endures, quietly, resiliently, even here. You climb a slight rise to overlook the city one last time. Rooftops sag, streets twist and vanish into shadows, courtyards lie overgrown. Every step you've taken has traced absence, yet presence lingers in objects, imprints, and nature's reclamation. You realize the city is not just gone, it has evolved, transformed by stillness, wind, and the tenacity of life itself. Historians still argue whether studying abandoned cities teaches more about human resilience or fragility. Here, in this moment, both truths are apparent. The city's inhabitants vanished, but their traces, their games, their scratches, their echoes persist. And now you carry them with you. You step away from the last plaza, leaving behind half-collapsed walls, silent fountains, and creeping ivy. The city's memory presses lightly against your back, a gentle weight reminding you that even in absence, stories endure. Each imprint, each shadow, each whispering wall is now part of you, stitched quietly into the folds of your own imagination. The sun dips fully below the horizon, painting the sky with muted shades of orange and purple. You walk slowly, savoring each step as the city's edges blur, softened by shadow and distance. The stones beneath your feet have held centuries of movement, and now they hum faintly under your careful tread. Every corner you pass, every alleyway, every abandoned home carries a whisper of life once lived, of laughter once heard, and of moments frozen mid-motion. You let the details settle: the toys, the feasts, the scratches on walls, the footprints and handprints pressed into soil and plaster. They are not haunting in the frightening sense, but tender, ephemeral reminders that life persists in memory even when it has vanished from sight. Nature weaves its soft reclamation across the city, wrapping vines around walls and letting roots cradle fallen stones, as if comforting the remnants of a world that no longer walks these streets.